let's get into the final segment. This one's going to be a bit unique. We've never done anything like this on the YouTube channel, so this is just going to be kind of a fun discussion. We haven't really talked about who our players are, but this is just going to be us talking about the most underrated Ravens in Baltimore history. And I will say I'm definitely the youngest out of all of us. So I don't think it's going to reflect in my answers, but you guys may bring up people and I'll be like, I don't know who that is, but that'll show how underrated they are. So hopefully, I'm assuming that we'll know. But does anybody have a player that they want to throw their hat into the ring for underrated players?
I'll go ahead. Me, I'm a running back, fullback guy. Some of my most underrated guys. LaRon McClain.
Oh, I knew it. I knew you were about to say him.
Ovi Mahaley. Some of my big nasties in the back with my glorified guards. And my glorified guard in LaRon McClain, man, listen. I think he was there with Willis McGahee. Correct me if I'm wrong. But when Willis was out and he ran that ball like a regular running back, man, hey, I loved it. He just brought he was such a dynamic style of fullback as well. And you had Ovi Mahaley as well, man. Listen, before Vonta Leach, there was Ovi. And Ovi was a dog. Ovi would dog you down. He will wear you out. He's the type of guy that, you as a linebacker, you hate lining up against them. When I played football back in high school, I used to tell linebackers, where are we going? What's the snap count? And what we run. I say, hit me, put me on my behind. Get to my running back. My running back busting up 20 yards. So, them guys, I love watching them guys because that's who I model my game after. So those are some of my underrated players.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that the Dallas Cowboys won't be underrating McClain. All those fans, they see him up there, but definitely not a name that gets thrown out there. When we're talking about Ravens, only about 5 guys ever really get brought up when you talk about Ravens. It's Ray Lewis, it's Ed Reed, it's Suggs. It's Flacco, and that's pretty much it for the guys that get brought up. But there's a ton of guys that are play pivotal roles in either the Super Bowls. So, is there anybody else? Any other fun names to bring up?
Man, you said Joe Flacco. Some people, you could argue that he's underrated in terms of like his prowess as like a Raven, or his stature rather. I think that Joe Flacco, we really got to take a look back at exactly what he did. He had one of the greatest postseason runs of all time, and that's something that really does not get talked about enough. I know now Joe Flacco, he's a journeyman, he's bouncing across the league and things like that, but he, in that 2012 playoffs, 11 touchdowns, no interceptions. He outdueled Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, and a surging Colin Kaepernick and San Francisco 49ers offense to win that Super Bowl. That was like I said, it's one of the greatest postseason performances of all time. People don't talk about it enough. And for that reason, I think that Joe Flacco could very well also be in this underrated conversation, in this discussion. Do you guys agree with that?
Definitely. And I think just the impact that he had on the offense, I think that just gets completely overlooked because people will look back at those Ravens teams and they'll say, okay, it was Ray Lewis, it was Terrell Suggs, it was that defense, and then it was Ray Rice. They didn't need Flacco. The Baltimore Ravens, back with Joe Flacco, had maybe one of the best deep threat offenses in the NFL. That was a ground and pound, then let Flacco unleash the football, on 2nd and 3 all day long to, Torrey Smith, they started throwing it up for Anquan Bolden, Marlon Brown. Joe Flacco would just unleash that ball, and he had one of the strongest. He's probably in the top 10 and strongest arms the NFL has ever seen. Oh, yeah. And he never got credit for it because, a lot of times he'd make a lot of stupid decisions it's 4th and 29. Let me just throw a quick little check down. That one worked out, but then I'll never forget the Tyler Boyd game against Cincinnati because Tyler Boyd scored with a minute and 20 seconds left. Joe Flacco, I think on 4th down, threw a check down to Ben Watson with no timeouts in that game on the own 25-yard line with 40 seconds left, and I was like, come on, Joe, you got to throw that ball deep. But like, he was a master of the deep ball, and that was something that he gets completely overlooked because Torrey Smith was a weapon. You watch that game against Denver in the playoffs, and you realize, he was launching that football to Torrey Smith down the field, and they were making great catches, but we don't see the deep ball with Lamar Jackson as much as Greg Roman as well. But that's just not in the offense that we have anymore. That's something that's completely underrated from his game, was how much he helped that Ravens offense. Because if they had Alex Smith, or they had one of those guys that just likes to be a controlled quarterback, it wouldn't have worked. They would have lost. There's no way they're beating Denver. There's no way they're beating the Patriots. So Joe Flacco definitely on the underrated list. I mean, overall by media as well, but specifically by Ravens fans too. I think definitely.
In 2008, who would have thought a quarterback from Boston College and a quarterback from University of Delaware would be some of the highest rated profile quarterbacks going into that draft? I mean, those two were the future of the NFL. That's how they saw it. But hey, the guy, the elitist, the underrated one is the one that brought home the Super Bowl. So I mean, definitely, as Ravens fans, we definitely got to give Joe Flacco his respect. He played some good ball here, and honestly, I'll say this: one thing about the whole Joe Flacco era, they actually got offensive coordinators that work to his style of play. Shout out to Gary Kubiak and getting Morty Martinheimer out of there.
I mean, we also had Cam Cameron. We had plenty of guys that got up and left.
I wish they take notes. I wish they would take notes from that era and do the same for Lamar. But hey, that's another top. But I mean, who's another underrated guy? Will Demps at safety.
Yeah, Will Demps. You could say for a lot of that 2012 run sparked by guys like Jacoby Jones. Jacoby Jones was good for us. Jacoby Jones is honestly what I wish Devin Duvernay would turn into or become for the Ravens. That'd be pretty cool. Just a side thought. Also, Justin Tucker. Listen, man, he's somebody leads the franchise in points. Like, that can't, be talked about enough. I just got done, having a blast from the past, the 2013 kick against the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions, remember that? Yeah, that was 62-yarder. The kick heard around the world. He was a beast. He was a monster. He's still really good. I got my issues with him here and there, but he's still one of probably the most underrated Ravens of all time.
I completely agree. I had him on my list. I had two players. He was one of them on it. Because I watch other football games and I watch other people play. I watch college, and they get into these situations. They're at like the 40-yard line, and they're like, "We got to get 7 yards to be able to kick a field goal." I'm sitting there and I'm like, "What do you mean? You're in field goal range?" And they go for 38-yard kicks and they miss extra points, and it's like that. Like we take it so much for granted. How good he is, how automatic he is. I mean, there was the TikTok or whatever that came out, and it was like, Justin Tucker trots on for the game-winning field goal, and he's like, "Hey, man, you want a beer?" And then he's like, "What do you mean? It's a 57-yard field goal." He's like, "Yeah, no, don't worry, he's got this." And then he makes it. And I think 2 weeks later, he beat the Browns with a 55-yard field goal on Monday Night Football. But like, other teams don't have that. Like they miss those kicks consistently. But Tucker, like, every time he walks out onto that field, unless Joe Buck is saying something like, "I'm going to say it right now, he's not going to miss," he makes that kick. So that is underrated because, I'm not trying to watch Billy Cundiff make a crucial kick in a playoff game ever again. I'm done with that. No. I am done with that.
Pain, the worst pain I've ever felt.
You know who's underrated? I'm a shift it.
Yeah.
Matt Burke and Ryan Jensen. The reason I say these two guys, because it shows that we actually miss
a true solid center.
Matt Burke, smartest guy on the field. He was a good center, man. He helped everybody out. He pointed and he knew, where everyone needed to go. He took a lot of pressure off of Joe Flacco. He didn't have to make no calls. Matt Brick was taking care of that with his guys up top. Then you had Ron Jensen, a nasty mauler. Someone, that a quarterback trusted as far as, look, this is my quarterback, I'm going to protect you. Y'all remember that game when we played against Miami and he went at
Nico Alonso. Nico Alonso found out who Ryan Jensen was after he hit Flacco.
If my center don't have my back, I don't want him.
I'd rather have him be able to snap the ball properly to my quarterback, but being able to have my back is a good second on that list. So I think those are definitely two guys that, because you talk offensive line, a couple guys get brought up. Ogden, obviously Yonda. That's the main guys. But, those guys were pivotal pieces for the Ravens. And honestly, when they were trying to contend. So those are definitely two good guys to bring up. One guy I'll add in, secondary member, because, you talk Ravens secondary, early 2000s. You just talk Ravens secondary in general. A couple names get brought up. Obviously, Ed Reed is the big one. But then, you look at early 2000s and people may say, oh, yeah, Rod Woodson, Deion Sanders, Chris McAllister, number 10 pick in the draft.
Yeah.
Stud, absolute stud for the Ravens, and just isn't talked about whatsoever unless somebody's making like an underrated list or something like that, because he was very, very good. He locked that down.
That Chris McAllister, Gary Baxter tandem, man. Ain't nobody was getting nothing past them. Nothing.
Chris McAllister, he was kind of like the probably like our first lockdown corner in franchise history. But yeah, Chris McAllister, he's a great one. Somebody who's just Mr. Consistent. Again, Sam Cook. A lot of people take good punters for granted. Like Sam Cook has been good for the Ravens for years. He's one real quick. Of course, he's not the most popular pick, but yeah, Sam Cook, I would say him. Of course, we have receivers from back in the day. Derek Mason was really good for us for a while. Steve Smith Sr. for his tenure in Baltimore, he was really good for us too. So
yeah, absolutely. The Ravens have had a lot of pretty good players that go unrecognized by the media. Really, the Ravens never had media attention until Lamar Jackson came to Baltimore. So now I feel like, as we go farther into the future, people are going to look back at the Ravens offense and they'll be able to name every player because we were all complaining about them not getting, snaps or whatever. But, you look back at those old teams, you look back at the Joe Flacco teams, you can name half the players on the roster and most fans would be like, who? Even if you brought up a Haloti Nada or something like that, people would be like, oh yeah, he was okay. It's no, he was very good for us. Very good for us.
And people forget about our outside line.
Elvis Doomerville. I got to throw his name out there. But
I'm gonna go way back. I'm gonna take it back. Peter Boulware.
Boulware,
yeah. AD, Adelius Thomas. Those were some solid guys. Adelius Thomas, I always remember he had the mark, right? He got the scar on his forehead, and I forgot how they said he got it, but he was always a mean looking dude, but he was a quiet guy, and you have to watch out for those quiet guys on defense, and with him being the quiet guy, he got the job done. Peter Boulware, he was a scoop and score master for us because he was always around the ball, but him and Ray Lewis was always flying to the ball. So man, it's so many different guys we can call up. Sam Adams, Tony Saragusa, at the Saragusa, Kelly Gregg in the middle of the defense. That was another one that really, stopped the run, man. Then next thing you know, it was Haloti Nada's era. So it was so many different pieces, like Edwin Mulatalo, Ben Grubbs, man, Kalichi Osemele. We done produced so many good guys in that box, man.
So, absolutely. Also, I will say we didn't bring up a single tight end We got a ton of them, all underrated. But I feel like that's pretty good, unless there's like one person that we just didn't bring up. Hopefully, I didn't. Comment down below anybody if we just like blatantly miss somebody.
Somebody's going to say Quadri Ishmael or Dwayne Starks, probably.
Oh yeah, definitely. Matt Skura. Just kidding. Yeah, not anymore. But thank you everybody for listening to the podcast. It's pretty much going to go wrap it up. Make sure to go check out the Purple Rain podcast. On YouTube, link down below in this description. Go subscribe to that and go check out the live streams. They're a lot of fun. But thank you everybody for listening. Check out the podcast platform. Follow us on Twitter. And see all of you later for a podcast episode. But I'll see all of you again tomorrow for I don't know what I'll talk about, but a video. Yay.
Yeah, and just real quick, thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate, you guys taking the time to bring me on here and say my piece about the Ravens, and I hope to be back for sure.
Oh, definitely. That was a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.